When you picture a hacker, what comes to mind? Probably someone in a hoodie, right? In a dark room, just furiously typing away to break into some system. But in the world of professional security, the most important work, the real make or break stuff, happens way before anyone even touches a keyboard. So let's get into the methodical and, honestly, the really interesting first step of a professional hack. It all really boils down to this, doesn't it? How do you take the skill set of an attacker and turn it into a legitimate, high-paying career? Well, the answer has a lot more to do with contracts and conference calls than it does with cloaks and dagger. And that brings us to the first and, without a doubt, the most critical phase of the whole operation: getting permission. And we're not talking about a casual nod or a handshake here. This is a formal process, and it's the foundation for everything that comes next. Yeah, you heard that right. Professional hacking, or what we call penetration testing, is a service. Companies actually hire you to find their security holes before a real bad guy does. It's a relationship built completely on trust, and that trust begins with explicit, written permission. Because without it, you're not a security pro, you're just a criminal. Simple as that. To make all this a bit more concrete, let's follow someone, let's call her Joanna. She's a security analyst, and her company handles a ton of credit card transactions, like over 500,000 a year. Her job is to hire a team of ethical hackers to test their defenses. She's going to be our guide through this whole crucial first phase. So, you might think Joanna's first job is to, find some hackers, but nope. Her first task is to manage what the industry calls pre-engagement activities. This is the whole planning stage, everything from figuring out what to test to signing legal documents that make sure the test is safe, legal, and actually useful. Alright, so you've got the green light. Now what? Well, now it's time to draw the battle lines. In pen testing, we call this defining the scope, and it is all about setting very, very clear boundaries. Think of the scope as the literal map of the mission. It tells the testers exactly which systems, which networks, and which apps they're allowed to go after. And, just as important, it tells them what's completely off limits. See, attacking an out-of-scope system isn't just a whoopsie. It can lead to lawsuits, and you could accidentally bring down a critical piece of the business you were never supposed to touch. So how do you even begin to define that scope? Well, it really just comes down to Joanna and the testing team sitting down and answering these fundamental questions. First, why are we doing this? Is it for a specific compliance regulation? Second, what are we testing? And what are we not testing? Are certain aggressive techniques, like ones that could crash a server, totally forbidden? Getting all this stuff in writing is absolutely key to avoiding major headaches later on. And for Joanna, that why is a big one: compliance. Because her company handles credit card data, they have to follow the rules of the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS. It's a whole set of security rules, and one of those rules says you have to get regular security tests. So right there, that regulation is already shaping the entire scope of her project. Okay, the map is drawn. Now, everyone needs to agree on how the game is played. This is what's formally known as the rules of engagement, and it lays out precisely how the test is going to go down. And this is probably my favorite part of the whole process. Every ethical hacker needs what's affectionately called a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's exactly what it sounds like: a signed authorization letter from the client. If the police or a system admin sees the attack and comes knocking, this piece of paper is the proof that says, hey, I'm supposed to be here. It's your ultimate legal shield. The rules of engagement document covers everything else. Everything. Who do you call at 3 a.m. if a critical server suddenly dies? What are the exact dates and times you're allowed to test so you don't mess up the business? And hey, what happens if something does break? This document is all about managing risk and making sure there are absolutely no surprises. And to make it all ironclad, everything gets wrapped up in some serious legal paperwork. You'll have a statement of work, or SOW, that details all the tasks and timelines. And, of course, a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, to make sure that any secrets the testers find stay secret. This is serious business, after all. So the legal stuff is sorted, the rules are set, but there's one more huge decision to make. What kind of test is this even going to be? It all depends on how much information you give the testers before they start. Let's look at the three main flavors. So you've got two extremes, right? On one side, you have the white box test. This is where you give the testers pretty much everything: network diagrams, source code, maybe even login credentials. It's fantastic for a super deep, thorough audit. Then, on the complete opposite end, you have the black box test. Here, the testers get nothing, maybe just the company's name. They have to find out everything on their own, just like a real attacker would. And sitting right there in the middle is the approach that most people actually use, the gray box test. Maybe you give the testers a standard user account and see if they can become an administrator. It's a great balance, really. You get the efficiency of a white box test with the real-world perspective of a black box attack. So let's circle back to Joanna. For her big PCI compliance test, what's the right call? A white box test would be really efficient for finding all the vulnerabilities in the system she already knows about, but a black box test would do a better job of simulating a real external attacker trying to get in. Honestly, there's no single right answer. It really depends on what the main goal of the assessment is. So, as we start to wrap this up, if you take away just one thing from all of this, it should be this. The most powerful weapon in an ethical hacker's toolkit isn't some secret piece of software. It's the plan. I absolutely love this saying. You can have the most amazing technical skills on the planet, but without a clear, legally solid plan, those skills are useless, or even worse, they're dangerous. That scope document, those rules of engagement, that's what unlocks the ability to do a test that's actually valuable. At the end of the day, all this pre-engagement planning is what separates professional security testing from just chaotic, illegal hacking. It's the framework that protects both the company and the testers, and it ensures the final report actually makes the company safer. So the plan's locked in, the rules are clear, permission's been granted, the keyboard is finally humming. The real question is, with the mission a go, where does a hacker even begin to look for the first crack in the armor? We'll have to save that for another time.